Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, it is a final OG mailbag and so much more.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1118 of Locked On Canadiens, your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day of the week, wherever you get your podcasts, Google, Apple, Spotify, or here on YouTube.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Some terms do apply. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Matla, and I'm joined, as always, by the active stick, Laura Saba. And by the time you were listening to this, there will be a bonus episode in your inbox, too, because I had time and I wanted to get some prospect opinions out, of which I know people will probably be a teensy bit disagreeable, but tweet us at LO_Canadiens. We want your top 5 favorite, not best, favorite prospect list in our inbox ASAP. And we are here, though, today with a very, I guess, bittersweet potential mailbag. But before we get into that, I need to introduce my co-host, the active stick, Laura. It was a beautiful day here in Western New York. I got to drive through the Finger Lakes for work today with the windows down, and it was 75 with a breeze, which is just chef's kiss, perfect for everything. How are we feeling as we head into the dog days of summer? And I'm going to call it that because it's the end of July almost. August is around the corner, and Kent Hughes is taking a nap, I assume, at this point.
Well, the man needs his rest. He had a very big draft. He had actually a big year of trying to pretend he didn't want to meet off. So I think things will start picking up in August. And on this show, we will have a new co-host in August. So this is actually Scott's last official Friday mailbag. He's going to take questions on his Hot Ones episode, which is coming next Friday night, and we'll be live with that. But in the meantime, this is it's actually like I was about to get emotional when you were talking about how it was bittersweet, but I think this is one of the most fun things that I've ever had to do is mailbags with Scott, and we will have mailbags with Ian, but this is like the mailbag in this format is over as we've seen it. So this is the last one. I'm very happy, I'm very sad, and I'm excited for what's to come.
And here's the thing, is we're not jumping right into the mailbag, which was the brainchild of Lauren and myself. Not that we're the first podcast to ever do a mailbag here or anything, but it's been our longest running series alongside 3 Up and 3 Down on this podcast. We're going to start right with the biggest news that we skipped the Wednesday episode due to some stuff going on. And I wanted to get this part out because I think it is important for those folks who have listened to this podcast for long enough, kind of know where we stand on a lot of things. And earlier this week, the Edmonton Oilers announced that they had hired as their executive vice president and new general manager, Stan Bowman, who you will know as the former general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks, who was more or less kicked out for his role in the Kyle Beach scandal and the cover-up that ensued with that, to which the NHL recently really just kind of burying it in the post-draft and free agency news, okayed their return to hockey, and almost immediately Stan Bowman's name was linked to the Edmonton Oilers, and there was a certain head of the Professional Hockey Writers Association carrying water by the bucketful for this in a way that is gross, considering he was one of the many prominent hockey members saying, we will learn from this. We will learn to be better on our reporting and how we handle these situations and really be the new front on this. So it is not just Katie Strang and Rick Westhead doing everything, and that we are going to stand strong until his buddies in Edmonton clearly gave him a phone call and said, this is what we want to do, get the ball rolling. And in that time, I haven't seen pushback or even a bit of critical questioning from any member of this media that supposedly learned something, to which I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I'm not, when your head of the Writers Association is happy with keeping hockey 15 years behind everything else. And my biggest thought with all of this, among everything else, is the Edmonton Oilers are a disgrace. What are you doing? You are the Canadian team that came within a hair's breadth of winning the Stanley Cup. The first one in, it would be 31 years since the Canadiens last won it. You got further than the Habs did in 2021. That is very true. You were this close. And then you went out and you absolutely took all that goodwill, if there was any goodwill. I don't think there was much from a lot of other people around this team, but within your own fan base, gave them the double birds and hired a man who was fired for covering up the sexual assault of a player by an employee so you could try and win more games. And then you were also fired from that job as part of one, you were terrible at it your last few years in charge, and is for in your role in a cover up. And if I was the Edmonton Oilers, I'm looking at this and I'm going, why am I doing this? Yeah, you let Ken Holland go, which is probably the smarter move to make there. But you went and hired somebody who doesn't just have, the little bag that goes under your seat on the plane, or their carry-on that goes in the nice little overhead bin. They're coming with a cart of luggage a mile long.
A truckload.
Fill this. What are you doing? It's a slap. And then the whole thing in this, I texted Kyle Beach and had a nice long conversation about him, and he wished me well. Is not a thing that is does not seem normal at all to me. I don't get it. And it's like, I'm not an Oilers fan, but now I'm, instead of just like memefully rooting for their downfall, I'm actively rooting for it, because you don't deserve anything nice out of this. It's a disgrace. And the fact that the NHL was like, yeah, you've learned your lesson. Sure. I hate it. It's like, it's a midsummer news dump, and it just reminds me that hockey still remains in fourth for an absolute reason.
And I know there's going to be a lot of comments saying, like, well, they did their time, et cetera, et cetera. They were out of the game for a certain amount of time. I think it was like 2 years at this point. To address a couple of things, there's, you're talking about carrying water earlier. Like, you can be a hockey reporter or you can be a hockey propagandist, right? Like, if you want to be an insider, you have to maintain those relationships in order for people to give you that information. But at the same time, there are reporters, such as you named Katie Strang and Rick Westhead, who, with every attempt organizations make to cover up and hide things, they still uncover the information. It's reporting, right? So your job is, you have to choose. You're either a mouthpiece or you're a reporter. And for me, like, I think that's the biggest thing is, it shouldn't be that way, that where the NHL or an NHL team or a specific executive that you're friends with or something can just start saying, like, let's start like putting this into the public consciousness. Let's start, socializing people to this. I think that in itself is just, it's so disrespectful to everybody, to your readers, to everybody. Like, you should not be, like, people should not be able to buy you by promising you information in exchange for favorable coverage. And I think that's the biggest fundamental reason. And the next thing is, the Oilers doing this, like, if you are a general manager, and this is literally his job, general manager, right? You are tasked not just with running an organization, but also with these young lives, right? These prospects that come into your organization, you are responsible for their growth and for their well-being. And for one, like, they're grown-ups, but they are very immature, very young grown-ups. And they need to be safe. Like, they need to be in an environment where they can thrive, where they can be assured of their own safety. And this is not it. And for me, like, I think that's the biggest thing is, I look at this decision and I just think about, like, are these young players really safe? Are all of the organizations of children's hockey that the Edmonton Oilers support, like, are they safe? Like, what kind of an example is this setting? To me, that's it. Like, as a manager, like, you have to ensure that the people you're in charge of have that assurance that they're safe with you. And if I'm an Edmonton Oilers player, that's not necessarily what I'm seeing. And, like, opinions are going to vary on whether they did their time and they learned their lesson and they did the work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, like, watching this happen, I feel like it's like they just waited until like they had this alarm clock and they're like, okay, there's an acceptable amount of time we have to wait and then we can reintegrate them into hockey. And that's all that this feels like. So hopefully like work was actually done by, both him and Quenville. Hopefully there is concrete growth that has happened and work that has been done to make them safer for young people to be around, because you can't just brush it under the rug or turn a blind eye or hope it goes away when you're about to win a Stanley Cup. You address that. And if you're a good enough organization, you address that and you still win the Stanley Cup.
And the biggest thing is with this, and we talked about this with Logan Mailloux ad nauseum, is just because you've done part of the work or whatever it is and gotten the thumbs up from somebody as part of this does not mean you are automatically entitled to a job in the best hockey league in the world. Simple as that. There's no doubt that they might have done the work. We don't know what it is because no one will ever tell us that, but we're going to see how this goes, given that Mike Babcock got hired and then simultaneously fired within a couple of weeks of this happening, and this has been just allowed to happen and is already out of the news cycle, is upsetting on a lot of levels. But we're going to have to take that hard left turn one last time here. It is the final Friday OG mailbag, and we have so much coming up on that coming up next. But first, as I said off the top of the show, today's show is brought to you by Gametime, and it is summertime. That means baseball. That means hot dogs, popcorn, nachos, a nice cold beverage at the ballpark, and thanks to Gametime, the best deals on tickets, because they have the lowest price guarantee and will credit you 110% of the difference if you find better seats. And the best part is it is so easy that I can log into the app, find the seats that I want, see the view from my seats, turn around, and then go to purchase them with no hidden fees involved whatsoever. And the best part is the closer you get to first pitch, the cheaper those tickets will be. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Some terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens, and for the last original time ever, it is the Friday mailbag. And remember, if you ever want to tweet us, well, Laura and Ian, your mailbag questions, at LO_Canadiens on Twitter, LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com. We got a good chunk of questions here for what is my final regular mailbag on this show. I have 2 full episodes left regularly and then hot ones next Friday, August 2nd, 7:30 p.m. Going to be a real good time. Make sure you tune in to watch me suffer one last time for you all. Laura, I know we got a bunch, so what was in our Friday mailbag today?
So I want to read something from our good friend Robert Rice, who we know from Habs Eyes on the Prize. It is a bit of an emotional goodbye, so get ready. Not sure if this is something you want to read out or if this will be private. I'm reading it out and I want everyone to cry. But as Scott signs off, I wanted to make sure you both knew how much I appreciate the work you've done on this podcast for the last several years. As you may recall, I left Eyes on the Prize about 8 years ago, which had absolutely nothing to do with the work or the people, but with the worst personal tragedy of my life. And this tragedy happened to overlap the Subban-Weber trade, and at the time, it felt like an outright betrayal. I lost faith they'd do anything of note and kind of quit the Habs for the next 5 years, and I kind of felt justified dumping on them while I waited for Bergevin to get sacked. The finals run of 2021 dragged me back into the fold, given I, like many, were beyond upset that Price had never gotten at his chance at a cup until then. Chris Kreider, may you end up in a room in hell where the only thing to eat is rotten fruit. And of course, I felt the heartbreak when he got denied for what we would later discover would be the last meaningful games of his career. So I was sort of back in at this point, albeit my viewing time was limited, since when I have a Monday to Friday job, it starts at 8 p.m. and ends at 4 a.m. This is really why I wanted to pay my thanks to you both. I miss 2/3 of the games every season, and I've come to heavily rely upon Locked On for your game recaps, the breakdowns, the context that makes 7-hour-old tweets make sense, and both Scott's excellent Laval Rocket coverage, and of course his rants that more or less echo my rage at times about the game. Oh, and naturally, I've greatly enjoyed all the draft and prospect coverage you've generated during this rebuilding stretch. So good luck to you, Scott, in your working life. Having had family who dealt with constant road trip work, I definitely understand your reasons for leaving. And Laura, I look forward to your new collaboration with Ian. So I've known Robert since my very early days at Eyes on the Prize. And Robert was always really nice to me, even though once I came in not knowing a whole lot about prospects, not knowing a whole lot about analytics. And a lot of times when you are a woman in that kind of space, people kind of treat you like an idiot. And he never did. And he was always patient with me and he taught me a lot about hockey. And I know, Scott, some of your time at Eyes on the Prize also overlapped with his.
Yeah. I told Mess I wasn't going to do this, but Robert was one of the first prospect people I ever worked with. We watched the game in Montreal with you as well, the infamous it was 4-1 Senators Ides of March game. And knowing that not just, people on the internet, but like good friends that we've met through this, that we've had such a tangible, meaningful impact on their day-to-day enjoyment of the Montreal Canadiens or their fandom is always something that sits very, heavily upon my heart, that makes me feel very good and very full about what we've managed to accomplish in 5 years together running this show. Especially coming from someone who mostly didn't really know how to podcast getting into this. I knew how to talk a lot and not ever shut up. And here we are getting recognized on the streets of Montreal in between draft parties and stuff. So, Robert, thank you. I'm not going too far. You're still going to get probably way too many tweets from me at 4:00 in the morning at some point, but Laura and Ian are going to be in good hands. I know that he is not the only one who had stuff for our mailbag, though, Laura, correct?
Absolutely not. There are some hockey questions too. So Massimo asks this: do you think the Habs will make another move before training camp? If so, what do you think they'll do and what would you want them to do?
At this point, I assume it's probably going to be Laine or McGroarty. I just think they're going to wait one of the two teams out until one of them blinks and Kent Hughes will get what he wants. With the rookie camp first, I think if it's going to be McGroarty, that trade would have to be coming in the next, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, because Philip Machar said, hey, I'm coming into Montreal early to work with player development and go to Brassard and get training and stuff done there. I think they're going to want a lot of these younger guys getting in ahead of time and getting some early reps in before that camp opens up and before the games on September 14th and 15th at the Bell Center as well. McGroarty is my dream wish kind of scenario out of this, but Kent Hughes is percolating something. I just don't know what. He's in his lull period, and usually it's in the middle of August where he's like, by the way, here's the stuff that you've all been asking me for. Now go away.
Our good friend Brady P asks, who are you hoping will have a breakout or rebound season? And who do you think will?
I think in terms of a rebound season, and I can't believe I'm saying this, and maybe this is absolute copium on my part.
Let me see if, are you going to say Josh Anderson?
I am going to say Josh Anderson because it can't possibly be worse than last year, which I know is a very low bar to cover. But if Josh Anderson hits 20 goals, it's a rebound season. As for a breakout year, I really do think this is Joshua Wah's chance to really come out of nowhere and really make an impact on this team. I know that it's crowded in front of him, but I look at what he was able to do last year with this team, what he did with the Rocket. I think that Joshua Wah is the absolute prime breakout candidate. And I can't say Slavkovsky because that was last season. So I can't really say him again, unfortunately.
Gilsey asks, which would you prefer? Habs win the cup this year or Villa to win the Champions League?
Oh, man. You can't do this to me. Here's the thing. Ian's going to yell at me because he already yelled at me about picking the house over the Stanley Cup. I'm picking the Champions League this year.
And now I'm going to yell at you.
No. I have reasoning for this. Is that because I think that out of all the odds of everything, Villa have a better chance at winning the Champions League than the Habs at winning the Stanley Cup this year. And I don't want the Habs to sacrifice their long-term plan because they hit a hot streak or the percentages were right like that. And also, I've never seen my soccer team win a damn thing in their life.
Have you seen your hockey team win a damn thing in your life?
Technically, they won a Western Conference final in my lifetime and a Stanley Cup, but Everyone's going to be so mad. My soccer team has been terrible for like the decade plus that I have watched them. The high point was getting out of the second tier at one point. This is a new world that I don't know how to experience. I'm going to get so yelled at. The answer is if I could have both, it's both. Realistically, it's probably, when hockey season starts and the Habs score their first goal this season, I'm absolutely changing my mind on that. But as of right now, with it being just before soccer season, I am in that mindset, unfortunately. We have so many more questions to catch up on, and we're going to dive into the rest of those in this Friday mailbag coming up next. But first, today's show is also brought to you by the folks at FanDuel. And, we love sports. We love them so much. We would host a podcast if we didn't love sports, and we never want them to stop. But as the playoffs are over, the sports aren't quite sportsing like we want them to, but FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. And all I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood, because this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. The Olympics are in full swing. Soccer's right around the corner. There's golf, I suppose. Just head over to FanDuel.com and start making the absolute most out of your summer with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and us here at Locked On. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens. It is our final segment of today's show. And just as a reminder, you can go listen to our first two shows earlier this week with Tony Ferrari recapping the Canadiens prospect pool, the 2024 NHL draft. Lots of nice things about Ivan Demidov, because we know you all love that. And there's also a bonus episode where I ranked my 5 favorite prospects. So you can all yell at me some more, just like I picked my soccer team to win the Champions League instead of the Habs to win the Cup. But the good news is, since I am leaving the show next week, I no longer read the comments. So I will not know that you are being mean to me online. Laura will, but not me. I don't know what that says about me. That sounds like I'm a really terrible co-host, Laura. I'm so sorry you've put up with this for 5 years.
Well, you're saying you don't know if they're going to be mean to you, and I will. I won't. I just won't tell you. Like they can't be mean to me for opinions you have.
Not so fast, my friend. This is the internet after all.
One time I hosted an episode and one person left a comment that just said woman. Didn't say anything other than that. And that's what it's like to be on the internet, or to be in sports, or to exist ever in life. All right.
At least they were factually correct.
Habs Laughs asks, rank all the Joels that have played for the Habs since 2015.
So we have what, 2?
We have Armia.
We have Armia. We have Joel Hanley.
Edmondson.
Oh, yeah, Jeez, that's bad. Joel Edmondson.
How many Joels have played for the Habs? Habs players
named Joel. I'm just Googling Habs all-time roster to see what comes up here.
Armia, Joel Edmondson, no. Oh, did we have Ward for a while? Yes, we did.
We had him for the preseason, so I don't know if he counts or not.
Yeah, he had like a PTO or something like that.
Yeah. Oh man. As of right now, it's Armia, it's Edmondson, and it's Hanley. I think those are the only 3 Joels we've had, unless I'm missing somebody else in here.
I feel like we're missing someone.
We probably are, because they probably played like 4 games and then were never seen again.
Yeah.
Because this goes by last name, which is not helping me in the absolute slightest. Try and sort through the 7 million players that have played for the Habs.
I should have warned you about that question. All right. Sebastian High, our good friend Sebastian High, go back to earlier. No, it was last week that we had episodes from him. I think Monday as well. We had segments from him on our episodes. Also, check out Locked On NHL Prospects. Scott, what are 3 memories from your time in the pod that will stick with you for a long time? Wishing you both all the best with what's ahead.
The biggest one is, I think, the draft weekend in Montreal, where Laura and I got recognized several times in different spots, will always be the thing that sticks out the most. That entire weekend was so much fun. The noise in that building when Juraj Slafkovsky went first overall is something I still cannot describe, but it was just the raw emotion in Montreal was incredible. The fact that the crowd wouldn't stop cheering for Martin St. Louis up at the podium. Watching Slafkovsky exit through the crowd, his fans are like piling over to him like he's a professional wrestler leaving the arena. It was so cool. Also on this podcast, texting Laura that I would not be available to do a show because the AHL playoff game I was covering was entering triple overtime, and it was nearly 1:00 in the morning, and I was so tired and then I went to go get my car, and the parking garage was locked that I had to have the police open it so I could get my car out and go home. And then I think just the night we used to do what was called Spotify Green Rooms, where it was a lot of fun leading up to the bubble playoffs and the 2021 playoffs that we would do them. We'd hang out with JD, Jay Foster, Kyle Demetrius of Locked On Sharks. And it would go from, hey, we're going to talk about stuff to here's every thought on our mind. And during the 2021 playoffs, we would have whatever the late game was on in the background, and everybody was just hanging out. We'd have rooms of 60, 70 people, other Locked On hosts, and everybody was just hanging out, having a good time. And those memories, they helped really during the pandemic when we weren't allowed to go see people or do much because of COVID restrictions. It was nice to kind of feel that community again. And that was a big part of it. There are so many memories. I could write a book on hosting a podcast at this point, not hosting a podcast well, but hosting a podcast and just all the fun that's come along with that. It's been a crazy 5 years. Like I said, we've seen the team go to the Stanley Cup final and then draft first overall. It's been quite a wild ride.
That also answers one of the questions from Jeff the Red. But the other question is, what's your go-to beer at the moment? And what would be one you'd choose for a special occasion?
My go-to beer at the moment, and I love a Founder Solid Gold. Yes, I know that I'm being a company man when I say that, but I like a nice, crispy, easy drinking lager. And because the Michigan Pilsner is not available in New York, obviously, go for the next best thing. Jenny Ruby Red Kolsch is always in our fridge at home just because it's nice, refreshing, easy drinking, and light. And the Surfside vodka iced teas have become a big favorite around here with how hot it's been. Special occasion, I've got some Bourbon County Stouts, a couple cans of Mortalis As Above, So Below. And when in doubt, for a very special occasion, I have a bottle of Cantillon in my cellar right now that I've been waiting to open for the most special of occasions because it's a rare beer, hard to get, and it's something that has been on my bucket list for years and years at this point.
And we've got a couple more questions. I'm starting to get a bit sad as we wind down the episode. Jeff also asks, who do you think your next favorite Montreal Canadiens player will be?
Does Lane Hutson count or no?
No, absolutely can't. Demidov counts.
Because Lane Hutson's played 2 games for the Canadiens, but I absolutely think that he's going to become my next favorite player. Obviously, the team is still full of them. I love Arbor Jack. I love Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki and Juraj Slafkovsky. I can't wait for this next generation of young kids to come up. And I think Lane Hutson is going to be such a big part of that he is absolutely going to more than likely be that next player for me.
And then we've got a couple more questions. Who is the favorite interview? This comes from our good friend KCD. Favorite interview that you have done on Locked On Canadiens?
Anytime we've had Allison Lucan on before she was hired by the Seattle Kraken was by far and away the most fun I've ever had recording a show because I learned so much without ever being talked down to or made to feel stupid. Allison is, without hesitation, one of the best, if not the best person working in hockey media. All of our shows with Tony Ferrari have been great and so much fun. It's hard to say just one, but anytime someone says, hey, I'm looking for a guest to explain hockey analytics or something like this, I will tell them, go talk to Allison. She is by far the best host, one of the best guests we've ever had on this show, and always had time for us, even with us being a Canadiens podcast and her working, previously, working with Seattle and working in Columbus and everything. She always had more than enough time for us.
And I second that. Allison is literally the gold standard for guests. She is amazing at everything she does. And finally, a question from Logan B. Scott, can we look forward to you sitting in the balcony and making snarky but hilarious comments a la Statler and Waldorf from The Muppets?
Yeah, well, yeah. What else is Twitter for, if not making fun of a vice presidential candidate for allegedly engaging in couch actions? It's to criticize other teams. I'm not going anywhere on Twitter. You're still going to get all of Scott. You're just not going to get it on the podcast anymore, unfortunately. But as a guest, as our boss has said, that if Ian and Laura did not have me on, that there would be words to be had about that. But this is going to be the end of this episode. Like I said, I have 2 more regular episodes next week. And then I will be here for Hot Ones on August 2nd. So please tune in for that. Make sure you are following us on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com for questions, top 5 prospect lists. We'll read some of those out next week. Follow Laura at The Active Stick. Follow our new host, Ian, at Maybe It's Ian. Follow me at Scott Matla. Remember, you can find this podcast wherever you find your daily shows, Google, Apple, Spotify, or here on YouTube.com. Farewell tours coming to an end, but we've still got so much great content for you. And folks, we will see you all next time.